Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Zeffro. Welcome to the studio. Today's the second video in a three-part series exploring ideas and how we develop ideas to create a work of art. In our first lesson, we talked about the elements and principles of design when it comes to creating a collage. So we used magazines, markers, tape, and found different pictures and images in magazines to create a collage exploring words, free draw, texture, shapes, patterns, and color. So today we're going to be using the inspiration from our first class and beginning to think about forming a composition, drawing from imagination, but also from observation. So let's gather our materials and get started today. Okay, so the materials that we'll be using today include paper, colored pencils, a pencil, and a marker. We're also going to be looking at nature, so if you have a leaf or a plant or something from the outdoors, gather that too. I'm bringing this plant along that's here in the studio, right? So gather some leaves, a rock, anything that you find in nature, and come on back and we'll get started. So again, in our first lesson, we talked about starting with a collage. So we created texture, color, shapes, organic and geometric, patterns, words, and a free draw. So I'm going to look at these collages as I begin to think about drawing from nature and how we're going to be using our imagination and also drawing from observation. So I noticed the texture of the grass up here. I'm noticing the green color swatch. Over here I'm seeing different leaf shapes, different lines. And I'm noticing too that we wrote spring, flowers, sun, eyes, and clouds. So how will we begin to use some of this inspiration from our first lesson and bring it into lesson number 2? Ever walk outside and look around or notice different shapes in nature, different colors, and different lines? Ellsworth Kelly, the first artist we'll be viewing today, did just that. He went outside and drew shapes and lines that he saw in nature. The style of this first artwork is a contour drawing, which means is that it's an outline. Notice the inside of the stems and leaves are not filled in. It's just an outline of the leaves and stems. So he went outside and drew this from observation. The second piece of art we'll see from Ellsworth Kelly is a branch. And notice the organic shapes of the leaves. They're all different sizes. And also notice the long stem that is in the center of the leaves. And it fills up the whole page. So today we're going to begin by thinking about drawing from observation. Okay, so in the studio, I have a lot of plants, and I chose this one today because I like the different shapes of the leaves and how they overlap, and all of the different colors of green. Okay, so we're going to begin by looking at this plant and drawing an outline, a contour, just like Ellsworth Kelly. So let's get started. This one, I'm going to use this art pencil. And I'm wondering if you're using a pen or a pencil, anything that you have at home that's a drawing material. Okay. Okay, so I'm looking at this leaf, at all of these leaves, and I'm going to begin drawing what I see. So I'm going to begin by looking at the shapes of the leaves. So I'm noticing that they are curly and long, making a contour. I also notice that the leaves are overlapping. So some leaves are in front, other leaves are behind, overlapping. I'm looking over here and I'm noticing all these lovely lines in the leaves, but for now we aren't focusing on the details, we're just looking at the shapes, creating a contour, an outline. So what did you gather outside? Did you gather sticks, a branch, leaves, or do you have a plant or a flower like the one here in the studio? So you're beginning to draw what you see. You're noticing the lines and the shapes. You're noticing how in nature, everything looks a little different. So the leaves aren't exactly the same. Wow, is that cool? They're all slightly different. Some are longer, some are curvier, some are curled, some are flat. And I'm noticing all of these leaves. So our first artist that we discovered today was Ellsworth Kelly. And Ellsworth Kelly went out into nature and he drew a contour drawing of the plants that he saw. Now contour again is an outline. So we're not filling in any of these leaves with shadows or detail. We're creating an outline of the leaves. Some are overlapping. So I'm looking and I'm drawing. I'm looking and I'm drawing exactly what I think I see. What's cool is that if you and I were in the same space, looking at the same plant, I bet our plants would still look different. So the way that you draw, the way that you see is special and only you see that way. So it's exciting to think about how all of us can use our art, our voices, to share the things that we see and the things that we're thinking about. So I'm almost finished with this contour drawing. What I'd also like to do is maybe think about drawing the flower pot. So you're seeing an upside down or an aerial view of the plant. You're seeing it from the top to the bottom. But if you were looking at it from the side like this, you notice that there's a brown flower pot that the plant is living in. So I'm also going to add this pot to the drawing over here. So let's see. I notice that this pot is different shapes than the leaves. So it begins about like right in here. And again, it's a contour. So I'm looking, I'm observing, I'm drawing what I see, and I'm noticing that on the sides here, right, it comes down like this, and curves, and then it comes down like this. But what I'm also seeing is that there are leaves hanging over the side of the flower pot. So I'm going to just be sure to add some of those details in. Leaf that's coming down over like this, and then one more that I'm noticing that comes behind. And hangs over the side like that. Ooh, Wow, I really like this plant drawing. I'm wondering how you're doing. And then this pot comes down like this and gets a little rounded at the bottom. So drawing from observation, I'm looking at something. In our case today, we're noticing the glorious wonders of nature, and we're drawing a plant from observation. So we just discovered the artwork of Ellsworth Kelly and how he created contour drawings from observation. So again, contour is an outline, and observation is looking and seeing something a little bit closer. So we created a drawing of a plant. Now we're going to take it a step further and notice how a plant has all different shadows, textures, and colors, and how we can begin to create those shadows, textures, and colors using a pencil. We're going to view the artwork today of Max Ernst and take a look at this plant drawing. Notice how it's not just an outline. There are darks, medium, and light areas. There are also details in the leaves. It almost to me feels like the leaves, you could touch them and feel them. You notice the texture. You can see the veins of the leaves. Some areas have really tiny little lines. Other areas have full places that are filled in with color or charcoal or pencil. So looking at this piece of art, which is a little different than the first pieces by Ellsworth Kelly, Max Ernst is filling in the details that describe what he is seeing using dark, medium, and light areas of color and lines to share the texture of this plant. So let's do the same thing on our sheet of paper. Let's get started again. Okay, so here's our contour drawing, which is an outline of our plant. And we noticed by observing that the leaves overlap, are curly, that the flower pot is rounded. We noticed how it's just an outline. But when we looked at the artwork by Max Ernst, he filled in the leaves with dark, medium, and light shading. And he captured some of the lines of the plant and the veins in the leaves and the stems. So we're going to now observe our same plant again, but this time we're going to add in some of those details. So let's see how we can use our pencil, our art materials, to create dark, medium, and light areas. So I'm just going to practice with my pencil here. Dark, medium, I'm not pressing as hard, and then really light. I'm hardly pressing at all. So I'm going to fill in the leaves with dark, medium, and light shading to show that the leaves are alive, that they're bending and moving, and that when light shines on them, you notice different shadows and you notice different details. So let's get started and draw some of our leaves and include the shadows and the lines that we see inside of the shapes. Okay. So to begin, I'm going to move my plant, and I'm going to get a new sheet of paper. Okay, so I'm going to put the plant over here, and I'm going to look at this plant and draw over here, okay? So, again, where did we start in our first drawing? Well, we began noticing right away the shapes of the leaves. So I'm going to start the same way as before. See the shapes of the leaves. They're wavy and curvy. And again, they overlap. And this time too, I'm really just going to look at some of the details. So what you can do, instead of drawing the whole plant, maybe you're outside looking at a tree, or maybe you've grabbed a house plant or some leaves from outside. Get up close and really notice and see all of the different shapes and lines and shadows. So I'm drawing a contour line, that's the plant leaves, but now I'm gonna go in and start filling them in. So I'm filling them in really dark. I see a shadow on the outside here that's darker. I'm also noticing that it becomes lighter. And then it's a little darker down here. And then it's also darker again on the other side, on the edge. So I'm filling in the shadows. I'm looking at my plant here in the studio. Looking, I'm noticing. Really just having some fun. We learn so much more when we just stop and take a look, stop and see. So much to see when we go outside, and probably so much to see in the space that you're in right now. Maybe you're in a classroom or a bedroom or in some space, wherever it is you are. Look around and start noticing some of the things that you're seeing. So I'm filling in all these nice shadows and details on the leaves. Maybe you're using a pen, right? You don't have to be using a pencil either. Whatever material you have at home, you can create different shadows with lines. And then I'm noticing that this just all is filled in right down here. What do you guys think? Let's fill this leaf in. And again, everybody will create something different. Art is your expression, it's your voice. And we can use art to share our ideas, the things that we like, things that interest us. And I'm going to fill in some of this area of the leaf here. I'm going to go really, really light, so I'm not pressing down hard with my pencil, because I'm creating a nice light leaf over here. I'm going to do the same because I'm noticing that this leaf down here has a lot of that really, really light, almost like a white part of the leaf in the middle. So nice. So these leaves are dark green, light green, and really light green. It's going to be really nice in our next drawing to start adding some color to our leaves. So artwork, ideas, projects, there's a starting place, and then there's a finishing place. And we're developing or building our project as we work on it. And sometimes it takes a little time. Other times it doesn't take much time at all. So notice how we have the leaves filled in over here. So check this out, because this might be happening for you. So if you look at my hand right here, notice how I have the pencil lead on my hand. What I'm going to do is erase some of the spots where my hand smudged the pencil. Sometimes this looks fantastic, and other times it's helpful to just erase a little bit. That way you can see some of the details a little more clearly. So I'm erasing in between. And do the same over here. It's almost like adding a shadow or a bright highlight. Yeah. What do you think? So this is some of the leaves filled in to show that they are different colors and that some areas are dark and some areas are light. But over here, we also saw this is a contour or an outline of the same plant. So we have the plant, we have a contour drawing, and then a drawing that has more details filled in. And we looked at two artists so far today, Ellsworth Kelly and Max Ernst. The last artist we will look at today is an artist named Claude Monet. Monet was a French painter, and he was an impressionist artist. So check out this beautiful landscape of the agapanthus flower. So you're noticing first colors and lines, but let's learn a little bit more about this painting. So Monet frequently went outside and he looked at the inspiration from plants and trees and ponds. The gardens where he lived were very beautiful. And Monet planted this flower called agapanthus, which is a thin, wispy lily plant, along the banks of his pond. And he would go outside and draw from observation what he was noticing and seeing outside. So let's get a little closer and take a look. What I see are purple and blues, dark green and light green, a little bit of yellow and orange, and it looks like the flowers might be blowing in the wind and they might be near some water. But I also can use my imagination and imagine other details to add to this plant painting. So what else could we include? Maybe you want to include a frog or a bird or a butterfly, something else from our imagination that we can add to this painting. So when we go back to our third drawing, we are going to be using color. We're also going to be using and incorporating our imagination. And also we're going to be drawing from observation. So color, observation, and imagination. Let's get started. Okay, so our contour drawing, our drawing that includes more details like shadows. Now we're going to use the inspiration from Monet, Ellsworth Kelly, and Max Ernst and draw from observation, but also from our imagination. So our imagination, we're including things that we aren't seeing. Observation, we're looking and seeing and drawing what's in front of us. So this last drawing will include color, imagination, and also drawing the plant again from observation. So let's start again and draw a contour outline of our plant. So this time I'm going to make our plant a little bit smaller because I know that I'm going to be including a background that's from my imagination. So I'm looking at this plant right now and I'm beginning to see and notice again the way that the leaves curve and overlap, the way that they are twisting and bending a little bit. Some leaves are smaller, some are larger, some are a little longer, some are shorter. Right? In nature, everything can look a little different. In our first lesson, we talked about how shapes can be organic or geometric. So what do you think this is an example of? Is this organic or geometric shapes that we're seeing in the leaves? You're right, it's organic. They're curvy, they're not even. The leaves on this side look a little different than the leaves on this side. So we see a lot of organic shapes in nature. Okay, so now that I've looked at this plant and drawn some of the leaves from observation, I now want to think about imagination. So in this case, what I'm going to do is draw a really long stem. And I'm actually going to move this out of the way because now we're just drawing things that we're imagining. So I'm adding to this plant, and now I'm actually making it a tree. And I'm going to color or draw in some of the shadows on the left side. Right, so there's my long tree that was inspired by our plant from observation. And I'm going to give this tree like a circular base at the bottom here. And it's also going to have leaves surrounding it. So these are like little plants that are surrounding the tree bottom. And this one's going to be curvy and taller. Again, from imagination. I don't see this, but I'm thinking it and I'm drawing what I'm imagining and seeing in my mind. Okay, so I'm wondering now, what would be something good to add in the background here? So I'm definitely going to put some shapes. So how about some circles? And the circles are reminding me of the sun, of rain, but it also reminds me of the patterns. So patterns were one of our words that we talked about in our first lesson, right? And we saw this great leaf pattern. So notice that I'm being inspired by this leaf pattern, and I'm using that in my drawing today. So let's turn it around. What do you think? I'm going to add some more dots at the top. I'm also going to draw a butterfly. And I'm going to add some more dots. And then down here, I think I'm going to put some more leaves. Just a couple more. Okay, cool. I really like this so far. So let's add some color. So I'm going to use some colored pencils. And they're all similar colors that I see in the tree or in the leaf. But I'm going to add some red because this is something that I'm using from my imagination. So I'm going to start by drawing some of the circles red, filling them in. And just like in that second drawing where we saw shadows, I'm going to draw really dark red circles, and then down here I'm going to draw a really light circle. Light circle. Okay? I'm going to use the green pencil and fill in the green at the bottom here. I'm going to draw it from my imagination, and I'm just going to start filling in some of the leaves with green. Then I'm going to switch to a lime green. So just a little different. I'm really liking it so far. Adding some of these colors. Now I'm going to use some turquoise. So this color I do not see in this plant, but I'm using my imagination and I'm imagining that this plant includes this color. Actually fill in all of these, that blue. And I'm not really pressing hard with my pencil, but down here I am going to. So by pressing down on my pencil, the color becomes darker, just like the pencil did in our second drawing. Filling everything in. And then lastly, I'm going to add a little bit more green. And I don't even have to fill it all the way in. I just like adding just little spots of color that bring my imaginary plant to life. Wow, what fun. Hey everybody, how fun was that? So we started yesterday by thinking about an idea. And sometimes when we don't know where to begin, we can begin by creating a collage. So again, we looked at pattern, color, shape, line, words, and a free draw, just to get our ideas going. Today, we took our ideas a step further and thought about the words observation, imagination, and contour. And we looked at the artists Claude Monet, Max Ernst, and Ellsworth Kelly. So in the first drawing, Ellsworth Kelly, we saw examples of a contour, which is an outline. So we observed our plant. So I looked at this plant and drew an outline of the plant. Then we saw that Max Ernst also drew plants, but he included details. So he created shadows that indicate the dark and the light areas of the plant. For our final drawing, we looked at the artist Claude Monet. And Claude Monet went out into nature and he observed, but he included color and he included things maybe that weren't around in nature. So he drew from observation, and we also drew today from imagination. So in this last drawing, we included parts of the plant and then incorporated our imagination to create a really fun and playful plant from nature. So 3 different ways of thinking about taking our drawing and our ideas one step further and creating different styles of drawing based on observation and imagination. So in our next lesson, we're going to mix the two together and create a work of art that includes collage, drawing from observation, and imagination to create a work of art that explores our ideas. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you for the 3rd video lesson.